In 1955, border guards near the Polish frontier arrested a young man with no papers, a cheap bag, and a story that seemed almost designed to fall apart. He acted deaf. He acted mute. He wrote that his name was Karel Novák. And for the next 26 years, Czechoslovak investigators kept circling the same question. Was this a traumatized drifter, a compulsive liar, or a spy who had trained himself to become nobody? The first version of Karel Novák appeared on June 24, 1955, in Oravska Polhora, near what is now the Slovak side of the Polish border. Border patrols found a man who looked like he was in his 20s, carrying no identification. In his bag were only small, ordinary things: a knife, a shaving razor, a napkin, and food believed to be Polish. That was enough for investigators to think he had crossed illegally from Poland. But the stranger did not answer them like an ordinary border crosser. He used gestures. He appeared to know sign language. He presented himself as deaf and mute. So when immigration police questioned him in Žilina, they had to do it in writing. On paper, the man gave them a name, Karel Novák. He said he had been born in 1934 in Radhoň. He said he had been deaf and mute from birth. He said the Nazis had taken him and his parents to Germany during the occupation, then separated them. According to this account, he had been sent to a facility for deaf and mute children in Graz, Austria, received 2 years of basic schooling, then been sent back to Czechoslovakia after the war. After that, he said, he had lived homeless, taken seasonal jobs, picked and sold mushrooms, and slept around a train station in Ostrava. As for why he was near the border, he claimed he had been helping skiers during the winter, got lost in the wilderness, and wandered into the wrong place. It was a strange story, but not impossible. The problem was that the authorities began checking it. Almost immediately, the official version of Karel Novák started to crack. Investigators reportedly found no record of his birth in Radhoň. Nobody in Graz seemed to recognize him, even though he knew the names of doctors there. The police transferred him to Prague, held him for months, and repeatedly interrogated him. The source account says he was beaten and tortured, but even under that pressure, he would not abandon the story. At the same time, police looked for people who might recognize him from refugee camps. One man claimed he had seen someone matching Karel's description several times between 1951 and 1954 at a camp in Nuremberg, and said that man spoke Czech with an accent and worked as a translator for the CIA. Another witness claimed to have met him in 1952 at a refugee camp in Wels, Austria, and remembered burns on his forearms. Police did find scars there, but Karel said they came from practicing gymnastics. Crucially, these refugee camp testimonies were never officially verified as fact. They were leads, not proof. But they pushed the case in a more dangerous direction. If even part of those statements were true, then Karel was not a homeless deaf-mute who drifted out of the woods. He was an educated man with a concealed past, moving through refugee spaces at the height of the Cold War. The disability question only made him harder to explain. Authorities did not believe he was truly deaf, yet the medical examinations were often inconclusive. Experts reportedly said it would be nearly impossible to fake such a condition to the degree he seemed to. Interrogators tried to catch him reacting to noise, including secretly slamming objects behind him, and according to the source, he did not flinch. But then there was the other side of the file. In writing, Karel showed extraordinary language ability. He was described as fluent in Slovak and German in written form, and his knowledge did not match the life story he had given. A psychiatrist reportedly described him as highly intelligent and very highly educated, which did not fit a man who claimed only 2 years of basic schooling and a life of homelessness. The psychiatrist wanted him kept for treatment, but the request was denied. In December 1955, with too little evidence to hold him, Karel was released. That did not end the case. It only moved it into the shadows. The Czechoslovak secret police, the CB, began watching him. After his release, Karel found work as a construction worker and moved among people described in the file as being on the edge of society. Some co-workers believed he really was deaf. One incident seemed to support that. He was nearly crushed by a falling wall. He appeared not to hear. Then, the CB inserted a man into his life. Karel became friends with František Weiss, not realizing Weiss was secretly reporting to the state. Through this relationship, a new Karel emerged. Weiss claimed Karel admitted he could hear and speak. He also claimed Karel said he knew Czech, Slovak, German, English, Polish, Russian, and some French and Italian. Then came a second origin story, far more dramatic than the first. Karel allegedly said he was older than he had claimed and was the son of Otto Habsburg, the crown prince of the former Austro-Hungarian line. He said he had been raised on a farm in Poland, taken with the staff to Magnitogorsk in Russia after the war, returned to Poland in 1948, and fled after his identity was discovered. None of this was verified, but from the CB's point of view, it transformed him from a border nuisance into a possible intelligence problem. A man with no confirmed name, a false disability, and multiple languages was exactly the kind of person a paranoid security service could not ignore. Soon, Karel stopped pretending to be deaf and mute in public. His explanation was not that he had lied. He claimed his hearing had returned after he was nearly struck by a tram, and that the shock, along with a head injury, brought it back. He also claimed his languages came from newspapers and talking to locals. He asked for Czechoslovak citizenship so he could marry and receive benefits. To the woman he wanted to marry, he allegedly gave yet another wartime memory that he had hidden in the woods during the war and had once had to dig himself out from a pile of bodies. The marriage never happened. Then Karel took another turn. He began publicly supporting the communist regime, joined the party in 1957, and showed an extensive knowledge of Marxism. He also joined the Czechoslovak military. There, according to the source, he was a strong soldier, skilled with protocols, combat techniques, tanks, and shooting. He was considered the best shot in his group. That suggested prior training, but he could not explain where he had learned it. When he photographed tanks and military equipment and showed interest in military buildings, the CB suspicion sharpened again. They also alleged that he belittled Soviet achievements. By then, almost every answer Karel gave seemed to create two new questions. The investigators kept collecting stories, and the stories kept contradicting each other. Witnesses from refugee camps in Nuremberg, Spalahof, and Wels gave accounts that placed him in different roles and settings between 1951 and 1954. None produced a clean identity. The CB put him under surveillance, wired his home, monitored his calls, and considered a polygraph, though that test apparently never happened. During this period, another version of his life surfaced. In this one, Karel said he belonged to an aristocratic family in Austria, moved to Poland at age 7, studied at a grammar school in Szczecin, survived Soviet violence against his family, was relocated to Siberia, walked through Ukraine back to Poland, later attended university in Austria, worked for a Polish ministry, owned hotels in the Baltics, joined a nationalist party, and finally abandoned everything to walk to Czechoslovakia. Again, it could not be verified. The most tempting way to tell this case is to choose the wildest version and build a legend around it. But the actual mystery is colder than that. The file shows a man who could generate believable fragments, names, places, skills, scars, and political knowledge, while never giving investigators one stable truth they could confirm. On May 15, 1961, the CB arrested Karel again. This time, he was charged with espionage and conspiracy. Under interrogation, he reportedly abandoned even the name Karel Novák and said he did not remember who he was. He denied the witness reports that placed him in refugee camps, and he maintained that denial even after being injected with amphetamine. Authorities tried to narrow the facts that could be measured. An anthropologist examined him in 1962 and estimated he was then between 27 and 35, which would have made him roughly 20 to 28 when he first appeared at the border. A psychiatric evaluation described him as an above-average, intelligence psychological anomaly showing psychopathic signs, and ruled out insanity. Then came a possible identity lead. A woman from Krakow named Teofila Grabowska and her daughters recognized Karel's photograph as her missing son, Florian Grabowski, who had reportedly been arrested by the Nazis and deported to Auschwitz. But when Teofila met Karel in person, she said he looked completely different and was not her son. Karel said he did not recognize her. The lead collapsed. On June 22, 1962, Karel was sentenced to 12 years for espionage and conspiracy. In prison, the state kept watching him. 3 separate agents were assigned to observe his relationships with other inmates, yet even there the mystery did not break open. Other prisoners described him as quiet, distrustful, and strangely content. He spent much of his time smoking, drinking tea, reading, or playing chess alone, sometimes praising his own intelligence when he won. He avoided other inmates, seemed irreligious, was described as being against anti-Semitism, and was possibly of Jewish background, though that remained uncertain. He applied for conditional release in 1968 and was released in 1969 for good behavior. The SB expected he might flee west. Instead, he moved to Kladno near Prague and lived quietly as a bus driver. That ordinariness disturbed them in a different way. They reduced surveillance, but did not forget him. In 1972, they funded and released a documentary about him, hoping someone would identify him. One agent claimed he recognized him as a man named Dekdefan, connected to the Ukrainian nationalist movement, but that theory was reportedly ruled out because Karel did not understand or speak Ukrainian. In 1974, the state even produced a movie portraying him as a Western spy, with the character killed at the end. Still, nobody came forward with an answer that solved him. By the 1970s, Karel's life became smaller and stranger. He grew severely paranoid, fearing he was being watched, and according to a girlfriend, feared a man in black. He sometimes insisted on being questioned by the CP, but gave them nothing new. His mental health appeared to decline. He began claiming supernatural abilities, including reading minds, changing his eye color, and predicting the future, while still being described as well-behaved. Then, near the end of his life, he drifted toward government dissenters. In 1979, he was questioned again, accused of conspiracy and of threatening President Gustav Husak with a group suspected of trying to free political prisoners, including Václav Havel. The CB raided his apartment and found prohibited literature, increasing their surveillance once more. In 1981, they planned to question him again. They never got the chance. On November 17, 1981, Karel Novák died in his apartment. The autopsy reportedly found no substances in his body, and the official cause was sudden cardiac arrest. But when the apartment was examined, it appeared someone besides the CB had already searched it. Some belongings were coated in an unknown chemical substance. He also owned a radio transmitter capable of connecting to foreign signals. In the 1990s, after the Czech Republic became independent, the case was re-examined. No new lead solved it. So the file ends where it began, with a man at a border carrying almost nothing and leaving behind too many identities to know whether any of them were real. Maybe Karel Novák was a trained operative who survived by burying his real name under false ones. Maybe he was a damaged survivor who learned that mystery could protect him better than truth. Or maybe the Cold War turned an unstable, brilliant drifter into the perfect suspect.